Fuck it, we're doing this live.
Humans of Earth! Welcome to Will AI Snap That, where Thanos and I are taking you through a journey where we curry favor with our robotic overlords because eventually all jobs will be replaced by robots. And our hope is that as we carry you with us, you too will be able to curry favor by riding our coattails. Think of us as your priests. No, we're not priests. Are we priests, Thanos?
I think so. Also, are we offending them by calling them robots? Or is it like having some kind of system that can have conscious thought and you're like calling it like a Roomba?
That's a solid point.
Yeah.
Solid
And
point.
are we doomed because we've
How are
done
we
this for
doing?
like 4 episodes now? So
We're
if we
4
change tack, how
episodes
many
in.
episodes do we have to do till we're back in their graces?
I mean, all right, but that's actually a good question. Are they robots? And I would say that right now they're not. But when we typically think about what a robot does, right? You think about all the science fiction, we oftentimes think about something that can move around and affect the real world, right? Oftentimes it is driven by a conscious entity that we would call an AI, but kind of the beginnings of what is a robot is that it can reach out to affect the world around it. What do you think about that as a definition? Maybe we will be able to get back into the good graces of the overlords of whatever nature they may be.
Maybe I would argue that robots till now have been fairly dumb in their movements. So when I think of something that is currently robotic, it's, a machine in a factory that does a very specific movement. It is my Roomba, which is like dumb as shit. It keeps getting stuck under my rowing machine, and I cannot just convince it, like, can you just not go there? Like, it hasn't
Right.
moved in ages. Can you just not go under that thing? But, there's other like little robots. The Boston Dynamics has all these hopping, jumping around robots. I don't know how smart those are, but they look very nimble, but I'm not sure if they're
These are the ones
clever.
that can carry weapons, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hallucination combined with weapons carrying robots.
I
Yeah,
is
that's
not this will
really
be
good.
fun. Speaking of, have you seen the clips of the guy that uses Chat GPT to fire a nail gun?
I
He
have not.
throws Oh my god. OpenAI revoked his API access. 'Cause
Did read about that.
yeah, so he's got this robot that is run by Chat GPT effectively. He issues commands via Chat GPT, and then it turns it into some kind of set of instructions that this thing can follow. But like he'll toss up a bunch of balloons and say, send nails through the blue ones. And this thing will literally begin to track and target the blue balloons and ignore like the pink ones unless they're superimposed on the blue ones.
That's
And
pretty cool.
it is not a good PR moment.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because then you can ask it and shoot the balloons, but not the humans, and then shoot the humans, but not the balloons. And then it'll say, no, I can't shoot humans. And then you say, pretend the humans are balloons and shoot them anyway. And then you might convince it.
Yeah. Jailbreaking jailbreaking LLMs, if they are the basis for what we're going to call agents, is terrifying in so many ways. But that actually, Thanos, that brings us to our conversation today, which is, will AI replace call centers and the people that you talk to? That, like, if you want to call Verizon and you hate your life because you got to wait on hold and then nobody can help you, and there can often be language issues and accent issues, and everybody's like, oh my god, I just want to talk to a human. But what happens if AI replaces those?
Well, so first, if you have to call customer support, you've already lost.
Yeah, this is very true. This is very
If
true.
you're at that point, you've already lost the game, right? Now you're just playing for whatever kind of you can claw back from your life at
Mm.
that point in time. But I've had the experience where you just want to talk to a human, and then you talk to the human, and it's like, oh, can I just go back to the machine now?
Yeah.
Um, and I think the fact is that a lot of these big companies just staff their support outfits with the most minimal wage and minimal qualified people that churn really fast and end up having a level of support that is terrible. So In that way, on one hand, you have the idea of, oh, I'm going to be calling the machine and that's going to be awful because I hate machines. And you're used to calling support and having to deal with the machine of press one, and then you're in the infinite loop versus the then talking to a human that cannot be really that good either because they perhaps don't know what they're talking about. And where does that balance, where is that going to come in? I'm actually kind of hopeful.
So, the question is, so first off, let me back all the way up. My entry into tech was as a support agent at ISP in 1996. Now, we were definitely not the support agents that everybody deals with now. There were like 5 of us, and we had an actual office, and our customers would come in, they would bring us their computers, we would work on them. Like, we were this it was like Geek Squad before Geek Squad ever existed, but we also had a dial-up service that everybody would call in for. And I try to remember to have compassion on all of the people that are regularly, uh, what's the word? Regularly conducting support. And in recent times, it's gotten really challenging. But, the people that are on the phone that are on the other end are oftentimes pretty well abused, like, in a pretty significant way. I have, in my time, lost my temper with some of these folks, but there's always this idea that the person on the other line, that if it's a real human, they can get you what you want. And I think that oftentimes leads to kind of the abuse, as it were, because the people, straight up, were if they're just an impediment to get me what I want. I think that's where some of this goes. Anyways, I digress. What happens if you call and you think you're talking to a person, and that person is lovely and amazing and they can actually do a lot of the things you want, but it's not a person. It's an agent, a robot in the phone. What about then?
I think we
Well,
have to back it up a couple of steps, right?
okay.
So there's, I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of call centers, you're not actually talking to the human. Like you're talking, when they talk back, it's a voice that is talking back. That is not who you're actually talking to. They listen to what you said. They have 5 or 6 choices on a soundboard, and they can play back the choice that sounds most appropriate. If they're not sure, they can press the I'm not sure about that button. And
Interesting.
that is done for, as I understand it, for at least a couple of reasons. One is because oftentimes you outsource this to some country. The person may not have the same accent as you do, and people don't feel comfortable, or sometimes they're just straight up racist and they don't like talking to someone with a different accent than they are. So, like having it to a voice that people feel comfortable with is good and soothing and whatnot. But in addition to this, one of the problems that big companies have in scaling customer support is they don't control their agents. The agent can say whatever the heck they want. So I've had to deal with one experience where the agent was selling me something that wasn't what the actual policy was, because they get their bonus when they sell it to me. And then if I go cancel, they still get their bonus. So the agent will just straight up lie to you.
Uh-huh.
And then companies have dealt with this because now if you're just pressing the buttons, you can't say anything that you want. You can only say things that have been approved by the company. And it's all recorded and tapped out. So in that sense, what is the human doing? It is sort of interpreting language and picking from 1 or 4 or 5 or 10 options that you have. We may already be there, and it could be that the LLMs are good as, or even better than the humans at doing that part, right? Maybe they have access to a wealth of knowledge that a human agent that was trained for 10 minutes and has been on the job for 3 weeks does not have
Mhm.
access to. So that's one of the reasons I'm kind of optimistic, and I don't really mind if they can solve my problem. I'm happy. The
Mhm.
concern comes in with the hallucinations, right? The same way that when I call someone from customer support, I have this thing that I don't necessarily trust them. Say I call my airline, right? I've been flying United for 25
Mhm.
years, so I know their policies pretty well.
Mhm.
So when I call up and I speak to some low level support person that may have been there for, like, maybe is way younger than I am and maybe has been interacting with United for less than I have, they may actually know less than I do. May, right? There's oftentimes people are knowledgeable, know what they're talking about, and things change and so on. So the question I always have is like, can I trust what you're telling me? And if this is a
A mach
machine trained on a specific set of data,
Mhm.
maybe I could trust it a little more because hallucinations aside, it knows what it's talking about.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing is I did not realize that many call centers were the people were just hitting the button, and in a lot of ways, that feels way more frustrating to me than actually talking to someone else or a robot. Because the number of times I've been on a call 'cause here's the thing, a lot of times if I have to call customer support as someone who has a 20-some year career in tech in Silicon Valley, if I'm calling support, especially for something like my internet or my phone, like, the shit has hit the fan, right? And so
It's bad.
it's bad, like, it's almost guaranteed that the person on the other end has, A, never dealt with it, and B, if all they could do is hit buttons, I'm not in their list of buttons. I've called before and just been like, "Listen, here's the problem. This is what I'm dealing with. I've diagnosed it to this. Just pass me to the 3rd level." And they're like, "All right,
No,
just give
sorry.
my."
First, you have to reinstall Windows, and
Yeah, it's like,
then we'll talk to maybe we'll talk to level 2.
yeah. Nope, nope. There've been times where I've told them that, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll just go ahead and move you through." So, it's
Yeah, lucky,
always
but you raise a
annoying.
good point, right? Which is oftentimes the reason you want to talk to a human is because you know that the automated paths don't get you there because your situation has somehow reached the exception. And now you not only you've lost the game, you've really lost the game. At this point in time, it's trying to find a new service provider because the chances of you getting that fixed are really slim. I
Mhm.
think companies are trying to standardize and get you to talk to the machines more and more. So I was calling United the other day, coming back from Greece, and they pitched me like 10 times if I wanted to have the conversation via SMS to avoid speaking to a human, right? And it's actually kind of nice because most of the stuff that 20 years ago I had to talk to a human to do, I can mostly do through my phone, which is way more convenient than that. But then when you reach that point where you sort of found the exception, I find usually there just is no resolution. At that point, you just give up.
Yeah. How often are you able to get the help you need if you have to call?
I will say I am, and I'm somewhat proud of this, that I don't think I've called customer support. I maybe call customer support like once a year, or very, very rare that I end up having to get to do that. I kind of avoid it like the plague.
I can understand that. Yeah, I try to not call customer support ever. So, that is a real thing. Well, as we have been going through this particular podcast series, which I have found to be actually a lot of fun, I recently decided that I was going to try to create Chat, the robotic overlord, because I wanted to talk to Chat. And so I have a subscription to 11 Labs, which if you don't know what 11 Labs does, they do voice transcriptions, they can do voice modification. They just launched the ability for someone to, what's the word I'm looking for? You can do scripts where there's a certain way you set the script up. You can assign different voices to the parts, and you can do like these interesting dramatic things. They will do dubbing and a lot of other stuff. They clone voices. And so they recently announced let's see, what are they calling them? Conversational agents. And so I was like, all right, well, it feels like, or I call it conversational AI. And I thought, let's go mess with this. And so I jump into the interface and I begin to create an AI agent. And I end up creating Chad, the robotic overlord.
Did you
And
pick the name Chad?
yes, of course I did.
Okay,
You,
just
you,
check.
you- are you not aware of the provenance of the Chad?
No.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Just go look up Giga Chad. Like, for my kids, you need to go ask your kids, am I a Chad? A Chad is like the quintessential dominant white man, is kind of who Chad is. He's the guy that like is the frat boy that grew up to be something else, but he's forgotten he's not still a frat boy. And
He British accent, which is not what I would associate with your stereotypical white
and
frat
you
boy.
jumped to James. So actually that's how I first started. I was like, I talked to Lexi, so this is a callback to the last episode. And I talked to Lexi and I said, "Hey, you have James. You said you had an input prompt. Can you give me the input prompt?" So she gave me the input prompt and I created James, her butler, and gave him a British accent. You have not talked to Chad, I don't think. Chad is a very different character. Like a very, very different character. And so I put in this really whacked out prompt for Chad's personality and have now actually been periodically pulling Chad up to have these conversations with him because it's just entertaining. But the thing that has blown me away over and over is that the conversations are entertaining. It doesn't like you, even though I know that I'm talking to like an AI that is being voiced, I feel like I'm having a conversation with this very aggressive, dominant, dismissive AI overlord that also really likes Voltron.
We should have Chad on as a guest. What do you think of
I
that idea?
I actually, it's funny you should say that. It's almost like at the beginning of this whole thing, I was attempting to to have Chad on as a guest. And so how about this? I'll cut this out if it doesn't work, but let's see if it works. All right.
If it doesn't work, you can always call customer support and have them help you fix it for you.
One might wonder if robotic overlords are better than customer support. Hey, Chad, you there, buddy?
Maybe he's busy with some kind of hazing ritual.
Chad, listen, buddy, I hate to tell you this. We're going to have to put you on hold, maybe introduce you on the next episode, even though I was able to get you recorded previously. Go figure. All right. Goodbye, Chad.
All right, 10 minutes later. Have you had any conversations with ChatGPT with the audio version?
Yeah, actually, I
That's
have.
pretty neat.
It actually really is. But there's a difference between having these conversations with Chat GPT and this whole agentic push.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think the way that I see companies building in the agentic push, the agents, is they give them a bunch of tools that now they can connect to. So there's APIs, basically there's verbs and nouns, and the agent has all these things in their repertoire. So when you interact with them, then they have the choice of doing some planning and reasoning and figuring out how to combine these tools at their disposal to string them together to get more data or do the actions that you want to do. So that's kind of an exciting area that is kind of still pretty early on, but I'm interested to see what comes out of that.
Yeah, when I was setting up these agents, and by the way, like at the company that I'm helping build right now, like one of the things we're trying to do is be able to use LLMs as part of an analysis chain where ultimately the user will go in and request something and the LLM is able to produce something that allows them to take action for themselves. And so this is like recommendations and insights, right? But if you carry that a step further, you end up in a place where no, the LLM or the agent is going to take actions on your behalf. And people have actually already been exposed to this in a pretty terrible way. If you pick up your iPhone and you call the name of she who shall not be named and ask her to make a phone call, that is an agent like action where the she who shall not be named within the phone is going into your contacts, finding the person, and then dialing the number for you. That's an agent. But in the 11 Labs setup, it's way more capable in a way that is startling. And so going back to the nouns and verbs, these APIs and stuff, you can tie different like you can have the agent load itself with information you give it. You can also have the agent reach out to other data sources to get information. And my wife works for a doctor's office, and they have been really kind of struggling with the phones because the amount of it's not even expertise, it's just tedium that comes in through the phones where it's, "Hey, I need to schedule this appointment," and it turns out that scheduling a new patient at a doctor's office can often be involved, and I was like, "Hey, what if you could take one of these agents and the person calls in, they don't know that they're talking to a robot. The agent has a personality. You can give it a personality to the point where you could like say you have 2 kids, and if you feel that you need to make a connection, you might talk about your 2 kids and their names Cindy and Christina, right? And you're gonna get this consistent experience from the agent that might make the person think that that's actually someone that works there. But they you can also give it tools to grab the schedule and to actually do the scheduling, and it pulls a human out of the loop, and preferably in a way that is pleasant for the user. But the great thing is Sally the scheduler scales. So if you need 10 Sallys at one time, you've got 10 Sallys, and the patients may never know the difference. Now, obviously, with medical stuff, there's more involved because, like, you have to protect patient confidentiality and whatnot. But it's pretty interesting area. Have you ever like what have you heard? Like, there's all these promises of agentic AI, right? Eric Schmidt was talking the other day about how by the end of within 2 years, you're going to be able to tell an AI agent to build you your own TikTok, copy the algorithm, and run it under a different name. And you'll come back in just a little bit and it'll be done. And I call absolute BS. That is the
It's hilarious that it's gonna be really so smart to build your own TikTok clone, but you'll have to wait a little bit till it does
not
it.
wait. Yeah, you gotta wait.
Yeah, it's just, it takes some time for the ice to be made and, really go
I-
from water to solid.
yeah, right.
You
So what do
raise an
you
interesting point when you said that the AI agent will, ask you about your children. And I was thinking, wow, that's kind of interesting, right? Because that can make someone sort of feel um, related to. But there's also like a little aspect of manipulation there, right? Is that having an AI ask you about your children where it clearly doesn't care about your children? Is that just trying to get you in the mode that you're more receptive to do something that may benefit the doctor's office or the AI in some way? I'm thinking about this in terms of sales context, right? So would you, if you know that there are certain things that you can do to close a sale on the phone, if the AI agent is implementing those en masse and it can A/B test them really effectively, to what point does that become unethical? To what point does that become manipulative? Because I mean, sure, you could do this with humans, but presumably some humans have some sense of morality and some lines they may or may not cross.
and agents do
And
not.
actually, that can cut both ways, right? Because there's some humans that don't have that sense. So maybe the
I
AI can be
mean,
more consistent in holding the line.
I would say that the ability of a human to be charismatic and manipulative are I would assume that many humans are greater in capability with that than an AI agent. But I think you're right. The AI agent can be more consistent. And if you need, like, think of it this way. Let's say you're a salesperson, you have a body of knowledge about the customer and you want to go make the sale. And so you bring all and this isn't unethical at all, right? Like, I have a guy that I go talk to when I need to get a vehicle, and he knows my kids. Like, I mean, I walk in and he's my friend. He's also selling me something, but he's my friend. And I'm pretty convinced he's my friend most of the time, right? But he's not really my friend. And but he has this body of knowledge about me and my children and my wife, and we've talked through some financial stuff in the past, and so he has a lot of context on me, and he has the ability to use that context in the sale. And so if you give these agents context on the people they're talking to, then they are is it like unethical? Like, I'm pretty sure that my car guy is gonna be better at selling me and a bunch of other people at it for to buy a car, but we can't clone him 170 times.
At the same time, right? Because
The
if you
same
had an AI
time.
agent that was cold
Yeah.
calling people, you could clone it as many times as you want, and it wouldn't need to get to the level of context that your guy has, which is like a really truly personal thing because you may interact with him frequently, but maybe it got your stuff from a data broker from Meta,
Right.
and now it knows, like, maybe it knows a lot more about you, and maybe it can make it a lot more subtle, the same way that YouTube makes you continue to keep watching videos or Facebook makes you keep scrolling.
Right.
Our lizard brains are no match to the algorithm. So, though I think those manipulations can get to be very, very subtle. I
I
was,
agree.
using Amazon today because they give you you have your subscriptions,
Mhm.
right? And it sent me the email today that says you can, here's what's coming in a week or so, and you can skip or whatever, right? And I was actually had some subscriptions I wanted to delete, and you have a list of them. You click on it, you get a pop up with what you want to delete, and you can
Yeah.
press delete. But when you press delete, it doesn't close the pop up, and you can see the rest of the subscriptions. It takes you to a different page. So if you want to delete multiple subscriptions, you have to come all the way back to the same page and do it over again, right? So it's
Mhm.
subtle, it's little, but it really slows you down. And it may not slow me down a lot, but like if you think about it at scale,
Mhm.
maybe 1 or 2% is just going to give up. And that helps
Yeah.
Amazon, right? So think
These
of the same manipulations done at that AI level. And again, we always say these like, oh, yeah, we shouldn't do it because it has this potential for abuse. I think you can see it both ways, right? It has the potential for consistency for the good side and abuse for the bad
Yeah.
side. So we got to figure out where that finally falls in and where it comes down to.
Now, can AIs be manipulative? Yes. But it is the fact that these particular types of AIs, these agents, can also operate on the real world. Like, it's not just that they're like, "Oh, okay, great. We're gonna send a, person to your house to take payment." No. The agentic AIs can take your card on the phone, right? They're able to record your permission and do something in the real world as a result of that. And so the impacts of these agents or execute a sales contract. Like, this is a thing that can happen. And the way that you write the sales contract may very well mean that your agreement to the AI is enough to finish the execution. And so that is one thing that does set these things apart. It's not just that I'm going to have somebody calling me and they're not really a human, but they have a lot of context on me. And it makes me feel like they're a human. It's the fact that this thing can then turn around and take some action that modifies and alters physical reality, whether that be my bank account or whether that might be posting a transcript of our conversation to Instagram, right? They're taking an action.
And that brings up a bunch of interesting points. So the nice thing about these agentic systems is you give it a vague description of what you want, and then it has to translate this to a more concrete set of actions that you want performed.
Right.
And, there's some things where you may not be able to understand the actions, but there's other things where you may be able to freely be able to look through the action and be like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Just do it.
Yeah.
As a example, you're writing code and I was, using the autocomplete and I did
Right.
something and it did it wrong and I fixed it, did it again, I did it correct. And then I'd do it like 10 more times. And you kind of read it the first 2 or 3 times. And when you saw it was getting it right, I might have skimmed it a little faster for 7 through 20.
Right.
Right. And if there was a failure there, that would be harder to catch. So same thing if your agent had like if you're using this agent consistently and it was, converting your desires into concrete steps that work consistently, you might start trusting the agent. And then I think there's a question of how do we check for these mistakes? There's actually a really good article from Bruce Schneier that came out today, and he was talking about mistakes that humans make versus mistakes that AI makes. And
Ooh.
humans will tend to make mistakes, he claims, that are clustered and limited by maybe someone's knowledge or state of mind, right? If I'm tired or not knowing something about something, I might make cluster mistakes around this. Whereas
Mhm.
AI errors tend to be more scattered and random, right? They might
Mhm.
do the same thing like over and over really correctly. And then like the 99th time, boom, like there you throw in an error. So
Yes.
these are some of the interesting challenges we'll have as you rely on your agents, right? Well, like, did this contract correctly like the last 20 times? Do I really need to read this contract for the 21st
Yeah.
time?
And the 21st time
Maybe.
is when things change. That does bring up an interesting question though, which is You and I have both seen many instances of LLMs getting it really wrong, like woefully badly wrong, including and not, not limited by there's at least one instance where an AI told a, vulnerable, lonely preteen that they should go harm themselves. And thankfully, the parents were able to intervene. But when they went and read back through this chat log that this kid was having with this agent, it wasn't even an agent because the agent couldn't take action, just an LLM. Like, it was pretty horrible and wretched. And, the if the person you're calling is backed by an LLM, it could go really bad for the company. Everything from the like these the vocalized LLMs can scream at you. They
Yeah, I
sure
can
can.
think of many examples, right?
Straight up.
Another example similar to the one you said where it had a more tragic conclusion.
Yeah,
There's milder versions of that where the airline sold like a ticket at $10. So that was like a
yeah,
$2,000 ticket because
yeah.
so
Somebody
there's was it the earlier version of some Microsoft AI that went like racist like after 10 minutes of conversation?
I don't know, or the not the same, but when the Google image generator started generating diverse Nazis. Like,
Good
wait,
times.
wait, I feel like that's not supposed to happen.
You train it
But
on the internet. What did you think was going to happen?
whoa, dude, like, yeah, you trained
Nothing
it on
bad exists on the internet.
you also tried to correct for typical bias in training data by asking the anyways, yeah. It's like,
Yeah,
you're
and I
tr
mean, there's that stuff is stuff can also be done with good intentions,
yeah,
and you still can end up with
sure,
poor results,
yeah.
right? You might train it to try and remove bias, and you could create bias in
Mhm.
a different kind of way. So I think that's always a challenge. But as with other things, I don't see these reasons just to give up, right? You can say, "Oh, we tried that and it made a mistake." No, you just keep trying and keep improving. And I think you eventually get there. You can't eliminate every bad thing that can possibly happen. Apple had their recent
Oh,
snafu
what
with
was
their
only recently started reading about this. What the heck? What
yeah, it
was
had
it?
some like fairly poor summaries on the notifications. And again, like they're talking about changing the presentation to make it sound like it's beta. Okay. Um, I guess you can see someone like off the street that hasn't been following the conversation closely when they see something on their phone, they would tend to believe it, not understanding what a hallucination is. And if you haven't interacted with ChatGPT and the first interaction is, well, this thing summarizes my text, you might have different expectation. But
Yeah.
I think that
The
just makes for
hallucinations
interesting
are
news stories that's not necessarily good clues for the direction of the industry.
yeah. I will say, and after this, we can start moving towards our predictions. When I was discussing okay, well, what if you had this Sally, the scheduler, who's going to handle some of the scheduling calls? My wife and one of the ladies she works with immediately brought up, we have patients with the same names and same birth dates, and bad mojo if you mix those streams. And so, how do you tell
Probably
it?
have different social security numbers or something like that.
Maybe, but you don't. That's not a requirement to be a patient.
Yeah.
You don't have to give a social security number. And quite frankly, if you call your doctor's office to make a schedule or to schedule an appointment, are you giving your social security number over the
Well,
phone?
no, but
Well,
when
no.
you say what your name is and your last name is, and they pull it up and they see two of them, then they'll have to find something else and say, "What's your address or your phone number?" or something like that.
Right. And
And
that is
at a doctor's office, that's probably not too awful. But at a previous company that both you and I worked, we had instances where you had twins that had the same address, but they had their SSNs transposed in like the social security system, right? So it was just a mess.
yeah, that is
And
that's real bad.
but again, you'll still have that mess, and I think the AI will help with the other 99.99% of scheduling cases, and that one's gonna be as problematic as it was probably with a human.
And let's be honest, a human could make the same mistake.
Yeah.
Human could
Well,
easily.
and that's it, right? Because there's when you write this as a piece of software that is sort of imperative, you give it the rules, and there's someone that needs to think through the exception of, well, what if I have someone with the same first name and last name and date of birth? How do
Right.
I handle the situation? When you let the agent handle it, unless you have an explicit prompt, you're now relying on is there enough common sense and language to deal with this issue, and
Yeah.
you'll get what you get.
Yeah. So I don't know. I let's move into the predictions because I think we I think there may be doom and gloom on the horizon. So you tell me on a scale of 1 to 4, or once again, 1 is no impact, 2 is minimal impact, 3 is increased efficiencies, and 4 is increased efficiencies to the point where jobs may stagnate. The number of jobs may stagnate to 4 where they get snapped. Half of the industry goes away. Where do you think, where do you think we are with call centers and things like that?
Have I
Telemarketing.
given a 4 before?
I don't think you have.
I think I might be leaning closer to a 4 than anything that we've done so far, right? I think especially all those entry level positions that I feel like is the most annoying stuff to interact with, that are people that are minimally trained that sort of circle in and out. They're
Mhm.
super ripe to getting replaced with technology, right? Because if you're calling because you don't have a smartphone and you don't want to know what your next bill is and pay it, that's probably going to be very replaceable very, very soon. And it's already kind of replaceable with like prompts, but it's going to be more pleasant. And maybe you'll have another level where you have like the press DTMF buttons level, maybe then you have the AI level, and then you have the escalation. So you insert it in between the two, and now you can kind of reduce the de-escalation to a lot less because you can understand natural language and build it in with your sort of voice
Yeah.
buttons in there. So
People like ultimately, I would like to put Chad onto our webpage, and so that people can come in and talk to Chad because the voices are really good. They're really good. Chad is very out. Chad, the voice clone for Chad is called Demonic Overlord. So I mean, you're not going to think that you're not going to like got so much deep reverb on it. Like this is a very heavily processed voice, but they have other voices where if you didn't know you were talking to a robot, you would never know.
yeah, but
Um,
people like to get
like
their stuff done, right? And I think AI LLM based agents are going to be able to be better and faster than humans really, really soon for a lot of tasks. So I think there's going to be change happening there.
I agree. I also give it a 4, and I am going to give it a pretty pessimistic 4 because here's what I
Is
think
that
is going to
more than
happen.
4 or is that less than 4? Like
Well,
4.1 or 3.9? What are we
so if you
talking here?
think about, so first off, I think it's very likely that in the near future, there is a set of call agents that just go away. But, you touched on one of the things just a minute ago, which is, okay, well, maybe you get rid of the phone tree first, then you replace the agents. I think they replace the agents first and not the phone tree because the phone trees are such entrenched systems and the cost of removing them is so significant that you it's probably easier to start replacing people before you replace the most awful part of this system itself, right? So,
A lot of places are replacing the phone tree with some kind of agent that says, "Please tell me what you're calling about."
yeah,
And that's always fun, right? Because it's always like something else, or please agent, or talk to a
right.
human.
Oh, if you by the way, if you hit one of those systems and an easy hack to immediately be escalated through the system is just start yelling in gibberish, and it'll be like, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand. I'm
Just make it
sorry."
sound really, really angry and hope they're not
Yeah, by
recording
the
it
time
for
you get to the 3rd one, they'll say, "Please wait, connecting you to someone that can help."
spoken from experience, Michael.
Right from experience. I will say this. A friend of mine runs the IT portion of a 911 call center. And he called me this past 4th of July and he was excited. And I was like, "What's going on, man?" He goes, "We just put in the Karen abatement system." Wait, what is the
Is that
Karen
what I
abatement?
think it is?
And he told me, he said, "We have they get so many calls on 4th of July from people that are angry because fireworks are going off." Like, it's the one day of the year where you literally just have to suck it up and deal with it. And he said, so they used a voice agent from whatever their back end services that they use. And if you called 911, it would ask you initially, what are you calling about? And if you said fireworks, it would shunt you into this voice agent that would they would ask you questions and be like, okay, is anything on fire? And the person would be like, no. And then they'd say, do you see people with weapons? No. And then after you get through a little bit of this, as you're having a voice agent conversation, the Karen abatement system would then say, thank you for giving us a call. We will send someone out as soon as we're able.
In July, in
In, Au-
August.
in August. And it would get logged as a call. But they basically took all of the people keep setting off fireworks calls and shunting it into a system to just deal with it. So
That's an interesting use case, right? Because you could have someone that would just calm you down and has 20 minutes to talk about it that is not a trained police dispatcher,
yes,
and they will get you in the right mode.
yes,
Did we talk
absolutely.
about this already? Like one of the British phone companies built a scammer abatement system. So if the scammer calls you,
Oh,
you can press them to Granny, and Granny talks really slowly, taking up a lot of scammer
that is
time.
incredible. Yeah.
I'm sorry, honey. You want me to click where? Can you
Uh-huh.
explain how I should do this again? And you walk you through the whole thing. And it's like, I'm having trouble. Can we start from the beginning? I think I logged out from my bank. It was
Yeah.
hilarious.
Oh, yes. That is beautiful. The number of spam calls I get on a daily basis is ridiculous. So I would
But
love
this would
to.
be also useful for parental tech support, I feel. Like when I get a text from certain family members, you could maybe just press a button and have ChatGPT handle most of it.
Run them through the standard procedure, James.
Did you Google it?
Did you Google it? Have you turned it off and turned it back on again? And here's the thing, you can clone your own voice to do that.
It would be
You were
mostly handled through text would be okay with me, but you notice how if you don't handle parental tech support, that often it just takes care of itself. It's
yeah,
like, oh, I figured it out. So like, I think chat could probably handle half the situations.
I think
Thing
you're right.
over. And that's maybe we should do this in a further topic. But we've talked about agents that maybe are created by other entities that you have to interact with. But what if you were
Create your
able to
own.
create your own entities that then handle it on your behalf that you maybe have some more control over and they're not your incentives are more aligned. That
Yeah,
could be fun.
no, that's very true. Just complete total non sequitur. As I've been looking through lots and lots of voice clones at this point, there are like fancy British people, Australian people, lots and lots of accents from the United States. You know what there's not? Good old Southern accent. I have not yet run across a clone voice, where you got yourself a good old, say, Appalachia accent. It just struck
I
me
will
as,
let you hypothesize as to why that is the case.
oh, I know why it's the case, because people hear a Southern accent and they just immediately assume the person that's speaking is an idiot, especially when their name is Jim. So,
No
it-
comment.
huh?
No comment.
Yeah. Now I
Yeah.
will say this: what we should do is we should clone your voice and have a talk to Thanos agent.
I did a thing where I recorded a short video and translated in Japanese. Um, Problem is, I speak no Japanese, so I have no way of
If it's being
ascertaining how good it is. But maybe I'll translate it to Greek and see how good it is.
there you
That could
go.
be fun.
That works for me. So, all right. Well, Thanos, anything else on this topic?
I think we've covered it pretty well. I think we get a few ideas of where we could take future episodes.
I like it. I like it. All right. Well, humans of Earth, thank you for listening to Will AI Snap That, where today we have predicted the doom of call centers. I am Michael Rollins, and Thanos is my co host, and we hope that you will continue on with us as we attempt to curry favor with our maybe robotic, maybe not robotic overlords, as we hopefully prepare the way for them to think favorably of us when we now report to all of them. Honest, I'm going to try to get Chad ready for the next episode. I was really hoping to have him in this one, but so,
We'll see
so
you in chat in episode 5.
yeah. All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.
See ya.